Thanks very much, everyone. I'm delighted you could all be here. My name's Megan, and I'm the Communications Manager with See Her Elected. Really delighted you could all make your way here. We've got a busy, packed schedule, and so I'm going to crack on if you don't mind. First and foremost, I'd like to invite our CEO of Longford Women's Link, Tara Farrell.
Thanks very much, Megan. So good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to welcome you all here today to the Mary O'Hara Centre for Leadership at Longford Women's Link as we launch the See Her Elected Guide to running in the 2029 local elections. So we're always very forward-thinking here. Especially delighted to welcome Minister John Cummins to Longford this morning and to Longford Women's Link, and sincerely thank him and his department for all the support that you've given SHE, because we hope you'll see that it's worth it throughout this afternoon's launch. So thanks to everyone who's travelled here today, and a special thanks to those who are watching online. And this is a really wonderful occasion for See Her Elected and Longford Women's Link, coming as it does as part of our 30th anniversary celebrations. And I do want to pay a special tribute again to our three founders, to Elsie Moxham, Tess Murphy and the late Mary O'Hara, for whom our Centre for Leadership is now named after, for their vision and tenacity in sowing the seeds for what has become a real movement for women in Longford, in the Midlands, nationally. And yes, we're now gone European and global. And Michelle was only in Berlin last week, and we were shortlisted for an award at the Better Politics Foundation in Berlin, which was really exciting. And also we have recently launched a global initiative called the Women's Political Elective with Women Lead. And we're really looking forward to sharing a lot of innovative practices across the globe. So we are really gone global now at this point. SHE was officially launched in 2019, and it's been part of a long-standing focus that we've had on the underrepresentation of women in political life. And that's something that Longford Women's Link have always been very, very strong at focusing on, being it that we put women at the heart of everything that we do. So SHE was launched just before the COVID pandemic, and came on the back of our long-standing Women's Manifesto programme, which was launched in 2009. And it's been so wonderful to see the numbers of women that have engaged with this programme over the years. We've had over 1,350 women engaging with SHE since its inception, which is a phenomenal result for what started out as a project in the Midlands Northwest, and as I said, has now gone global. Also delighted to announce today that SHE and Maynooth University have been successful in being awarded the new foundations funding last week. And this is a project entitled, and to read this, Building Bridges, Understanding Youth Political Imagination and Enhancing Political Agency in Rural Ireland. So I think this will be a very worthwhile research project. Political education for young people is something that we're really passionate about and have a dedicated schools programme for. Often we do our thanks at the end. I always like to get them in at the start. So obviously to thank everybody for being here. But I do want to pay a special tribute to Dr. Michelle Maher, because about 6 years ago that Michelle walked into this very room for our interview, and we knew straight away we had the perfect fit between Michelle and the SHE project. And she has brought such passion and such commitment and dedication to the SHE project and brought it from strength to strength. So I think a huge round of applause for Michelle for all the work that she's done. But it is very much a team effort, so I do also want to pay tribute to Megan and to Elaine Duggan, who is working very hard there on the communications in the corner. And these are three powerhouses of women who bring such passion and skill to the SHE programme. We're really, really blessed to have them. So just wanted to acknowledge that at the start. And ultimately, we're a rural women's organisation, and we strive to make things better for women and girls in our community. But addressing political underrepresentation is a huge part of that. And I hope you'll agree that the publication and the launch today of the SHE Guidebook will go some way to addressing that. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Tara. That's a great segue. I'm now going to introduce Dr. Michelle Maher to talk to you about our new guidebook.
Yeah. That's all I've got to say, really. I suppose, to paraphrase one of the great poets of our time, Britney Spears, oops, we've done it again. So here we are, a full 42 months before the next local elections, making sure that the most practical, the most complete, this most wonderful manual on how to put together a local election campaign is here, and just about to get into the hands of every woman in rural Ireland who is even remotely interested in running in the 2029 local elections. And although it is me that's standing here, this book is a team effort. Yes, the See Her Elected team wrote it, but this 2029 edition, it's bigger, it's better, it's bolder than its little sister that we wrote for the last local elections. And that is because the women of rural Ireland and some of our city sisters as well turned up to see her elected. I'm over the moon, and I have to say a little bit emotional to see representatives of the 1,350 She alumni here today. And thank you to you especially for making the effort to be here. You turned up. You turned up for our introduction to politics. You turned up for our introduction to local government. You turned up for our election workshops, our masterclasses, our summer school. You asked questions. And if we didn't know the answer, we found out and we let you know. And I would say at a conservative estimate, and you know, I only started to try and count this last night and gave up, I think we did somewhere between 130 and 150 workshops and in-person events. And I was nearly at every one of those, even those that started at 7 a.m. in the morning. And I listened and I took notes of what you were asking. So all of those questions, things we hadn't thought of to put in our original book, all those questions, the answers are now in this 2029 version. And this is what I mean when people ask me what this book is for. The aim of this was to get that information on how you run for election out of the heads of the people who kept it quite secret and quite tightly controlled, and into the hands of women. And as far as I'm concerned, because you asked the questions, you turned up, this book is, you know, all the women of She are as much an author of this book as we are. And the women we had the privilege of getting to know over the last election cycle were amazing. 236 of you ran for election, 99 of you made your way into council chambers, 46 of you came very, very close. Some of you are now in the Dáil and in the Seanad, but every one of you were a winner in my eyes, regardless of whether you ran or not. And I suppose that the point I'd really like to make is that the women of Ireland didn't just attend See Her Elected. They got involved and they stayed involved. They didn't mind me turning up after the election with a list of research questions. You continue to support us online. You offered to mentor the next cohort of women who are working towards the 2029 local elections. You got us back here with our new book and ready to go again. And it just shows what can happen when women get together. We get things done. I'm going to mention two of the women who, at the risk of offending somebody, I'm actually just going to mention two of the women who turned up every month at our election workshops. First of all, I have to say that Galway County Council's loss was our gain when Megan Flynn-Dixon narrowly lost out in a seat, but that actually gave her the space and time to think about a new venture, and she took over the communications and development role for See Her Elected and has made it her own. And with the addition of my colleague, Cork's finest, Elaine Duggan, does our admin and our content creation, we are off to a flying start for the current election cycle. The other person I want to thank is Chloe O'Malley, Chloe Niwalia. Níla lan Gaelic agam agus ga ur Clean radio na Gaeltica curm Gleach Chloe and Jern she agoni tago mai so Goramila Chloe. Thank you too to the board of Longford Women's Link and to the CEO Tara Farrell, because behind every good She team is a supportive working environment, and to the directors who are here and to Tara. We are where we are because of you. And to finish, I suppose I want to talk directly to the women who will, in 2029, do what very few women do, and that is run for election. You've already shown a huge appetite for political education and See Her Elected. Just by way of an example, last week, 65 women registered for our workshop on that one thing a month you could do to put yourself in a good position for the 2029 local elections. Next week, 10 women are doing in-studio radio training with ourselves and Ocean FM. And last week, between myself and Megan, across schools in Donegal and Mayo, we met almost 200 secondary school students to talk about equality in political representation and to get them involved in thinking about what their council does and who's representing them, because they are going to be the first-time voters in 2029. So, Minister, I hope you get a sense that in See Her Elected, we rarely stand still. and we do take the responsibility of your funding very, very seriously. And to the women of rural Ireland, the election workshops are starting in January. Come along, bring a sister. Come if you've done it all before, come if you've never heard of us until now. You are welcome, and we're here waiting. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Michelle. One of those events that I really enjoyed that we were at earlier this year was in Leitrim. We did it in collaboration with the PPN up there. And a unique piece of writing was developed for us by the author Tressa Nealon. She can't be with us today, but I've got my colleague here, Elaine Duggan. She's going to read it out. And when I first heard this piece, I thought the woman was inside my head. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
She arrives 47 minutes before everyone else. The lights need to be turned on, the chairs are to be counted, the boiler for the tea to be filled. There is so much to do, and if she doesn't do it, then who will? The leaflets she edited meticulously and then printed at home are placed carefully on each chair. 27, 28, 29. And maybe she has printed too little. Should she have printed more? 61, 62, 63, or maybe she printed too much. Maybe all this paper is a waste. Maybe it'll be crushed by damp hands, thrown into a bin, lie forgotten under the front seat of a car. Maybe no one will read what it says. Maybe no one will listen, because there'll be no one here to listen. Maybe no one else will speak up, because there will be no one who cares enough to speak up. She takes a photo of the setup, and it comes out blurry. Her hands are shaking, so she takes a deep breath, stills herself, and takes another. It's better this time, good enough for Facebook at least. And so she types, "We're ready and waiting for you, see you soon." And then she backspaces, deletes it, cringes at the multiple exclamation points, and instead types, "This will be a chance to have your voice heard. We are listening." She posts it, waits for a notification, a sign, for anything to let her know that. She silences her phone and puts it in her pocket. It's just a distraction. But if someone messages her with a question, if they need her urgently, she puts it on vibrate, checks her notifications again. 3 likes and an emoji thumbs up from her cousin Sandra in Perth. Brilliant. There's nothing left to do now but wait. She paces up and down the hall, the vibrations of her footsteps causing a leaflet to float down on the ground. She puts it back on the chair, not before noticing a minor typo. And how did she miss that after her countless scouring of the document before the breakfast time rush and the school runs? She swears, allows herself the luxury of the curse to fill the entirety of the room, then swallows down her frustration again. There will be no space for that here once they all arrive. And so she continues her pacing, down and up and through the aisles and around in a circle. She ignores the intermittent buzzing in her pocket because she just needs 1 minute. 1 minute to decompress. 1 minute to put her thoughts into order. 1 minute to bury her anxiousness, her anger. Because there's so much to do. And if she doesn't do it, then who will? The doors into the hall slam open and a gaggle of women, neighbours and acquaintances enter, chatting, laughing, cradling boxes of tea bags, scones and sandwiches. It'll be no trouble, they had insisted a few weeks ago. Sure, what's a bit of buttering? It's only something small. They smile at her now as they pass. Fair play to ye. A light pat on her arm from a warm hand. You'll do wonderful. They run like a tight ship, experts at their craft, pouring, plating, placing, dancing in and out amongst one another, an ancient ritual privy to few. Their busyness relaxes her. It's something steady, something familiar. It readies her for what's to come. Their soft murmuring encloses around her. She has passed a cup of warm coffee. Is it 1 teaspoon or 2 you take? And for the first time in 12 hours she sits. Let us do this, they say. Don't you have enough to be doing? So much to do and not enough time, she thinks, but for now she sits and she waits. The women don't let her wait in silence. They ask questions, lots of them, one after the other, and it calms her. Because she can answer them, because they are listening, because they too have their own opinions they express with such passion it takes her shamedly by surprise. She's grateful for their presence in this moment, for the reminder that yes, there is so much to do, that yes, she can do it, but there are so many people who can do it beside her too. That there are so many people who do care and actively so. In the hallway, she can hear soft mumbling, the shuffling of feet, the rumblings of a crowd beginning to form. Let us open the doors, they say, as she goes to get up, her nerves returning. Let us help, they say, as they take the cup from her hands and guide her to the top of the hall. Let us listen, they say, as the doors open and the masses spill in.
Thank you, Elaine. I still find that emotional. It's now my great honour to ask the Minister John Cummins to come and speak to us today. We're delighted to have you here. Thanks for making the time.
Thank you very much, and that was an absolutely fantastic piece. It really paints a picture, I suppose, for everyone that enters public life or dips their toes in, and the challenges that you face and the nerves that you experience in putting yourself out there. And that is often the most difficult piece at the outset, is taking that decision to put yourself forward. At the outset, I just want to thank Tara and Michelle for inviting me here, and to all of the See Her Elected team for organising this event and for organising this fantastic publication. Having served for 11 years in local government myself on Waterford City and County Council, and having served as mayor on 2 occasions, I've seen local government from every angle: its pressures, its responsibilities, and its possibilities. And through those years, I've also experienced times where certainly having more women in the room would have benefited local decision making, providing that practical insight into items like community development, childcare, and so many other areas. And while there absolutely has been progress made with regards to more equal representation in our local authorities, of course we need to do more, and we need to continue to improve. And I think local councils must be more representative of the constituents that they serve, and the role of councillor has to be more accessible, manageable, and sustainable for all. Since 2019, my department has undertaken a wide variety of initiatives aimed at increasing the numbers of women and diverse candidates participating in local government structures. In recent years, maternity leave for councillors has been introduced, and we have funded gender-specific research, allocated financial supports to facilitate hybrid meetings in council chambers, and funded our partner organisations such as See Her Elected to deliver capacity building and training for women interested in local government. I was delighted to be in a position just last month to allocate See Her Elected nearly €175,000 in funding to continue the very significant work that you're doing to promote more women in politics. My department has also allocated funding to political parties which provide for schemes such as the appointment of diversity officers, recruitment campaigns targeting new members from migrant backgrounds, webinars on political engagement, and work shadowing programmes for young people interested in engaging in politics. Today's launch of the See Her Elected Guide to Running in the 2029 local elections acknowledges that there are many challenges facing women in running for local government. The guide is an extremely practical aid for any woman interested in getting involved in local politics. It contains an abundance of solid and practical advice in an easy-to-use format. See Her Elected's provision of training and capacity building, which has been mentioned here already this afternoon, really puts a focus on trying to encourage and bring more people into the fold to put themselves out there. The participation of record numbers of female candidates and candidates from diverse backgrounds in the local elections last June certainly shows that some of the initiatives that we have been working on within the department and through organisations like See Her Elected are having a positive impact. 31% of all candidates were female. That was an increase of 18% on 2019, and it resulted in 26% of female councillors being returned. But of course, while the progress is welcome, we need to continue that momentum by supporting projects which are already underway towards working towards the 2029 local elections. And when I met to see her elected team in the Customs House following my appointment as Minister of State, one of the key areas that I asked you to focus on was retaining the women who have already taken the courageous step to seek election but were unsuccessful in 2024. These are women who have built networks, gained experience, and have already demonstrated leadership by simply putting their names forward. Their contribution doesn't disappear just because the ballot didn't fall their way. We need to continue to support them, to nurture them, to keep engaged so that they have a pathway back onto the ballot paper to pursue a role in public life. And between the She School, the guidebook, and the series of workshops that I know will accompanying it, the See Her Elected team are giving women the skills and knowledge that they need in order to be able to participate and contest those elections when they come. Research has shown that women tend to wait until they are approached before considering running for election, and that when they are approached, it's often quite close to an election cycle, and that's why putting a guidebook in place, that's why being so proactive now in 2026, well ahead of the next local elections to prepare people for participation is all the more important. And I suppose to the men in our communities as well, particularly public representatives, I think we have an important and an essential role to play also in inspiring women in our communities to put themselves forward, because oftentimes it is that gentle nudge. These are women who are already contributing hugely to their communities, but just need a little bit of encouragement in order to put themselves forward, and certainly that to spark, I suppose, that essential first step to taking part in local democracy. As you will be aware, I established a local democracy task force as well earlier this year as part of the programme for government, and one of the terms of reference is to require them to consider the mechanisms to make the role of councillor more attractive to a greater number of women and people of diverse backgrounds. There's a number of pillar groups under the task force that are looking at the functions and a number of areas in order to try and make the role more attractive to people to enter into politics. I've already moved earlier in the year to put additional supports in place for existing councillors in terms of security requirements, and I have said this on a number of occasions. That, of course, shouldn't be necessary. Every public representative should be able to go about their business representing their communities without fear or favour, but we have put those measures in place, and I look forward to receiving the task force's recommendations in the first half of next year. So genuinely, just in conclusion, to thank the See Her Elected team for the fantastic work that you are doing to promote more women in entering politics. In the department, we are absolutely committed to continuing to support you in your endeavours and to promoting more women and people of diverse backgrounds to enter public life. It is a rewarding career, but it is a tough career. And I don't sugarcoat it, but certainly when you step back and you look at everything that can be achieved for your communities, that toughness is absolutely worth it, because anybody that puts themselves forward, I have huge admiration and respect for, and you are empowering the next generation of women in order to take that massive leap and massive step. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. We really do feel very well supported by your department and you. I'd now like to ask the Irish Times journalist Kathy Sheridan to talk to us all.
First of all, I committed a mortal sin. My print is far too small, so I'm going to do a lot of squinting. But Minister, You've been awfully gracious. I had a go with the Minister this week. This is what happens between journalists and departments. Our timing is most unfortunate that we happened to meet 2 days after my column appeared. But I know the huge array of policies and issues you cover in your department. I don't know how one department embraces it all. But mine is a particular little personal thing that I had to go at this week. So thank you for your graciousness. Tara, Michelle, Megan, Elaine, Kathleen, it's good to see you all again. When this guide arrived in my house yesterday, I took a look through it thinking I'd written the speech, because I spent yesterday morning writing it. And I found myself pausing and nodding and even laughing, and realised I was going to have to scrap the speech I'd written. And I'm not being flippant when I say there's really nothing to add to this guide for an aspiring candidate. There's even a section, which I really applaud, on personal tics and behaviours that hold a woman back. And that's most unusual in guides like this. You really take it by the neck. That chapter alone could serve as a life guide even for women who wouldn't touch politics with a barge pole. Too much emotion, too many words, too much personal disclosure, too much ruminating, which I think is a very kind way of saying overthinking things. From my original speech, I talked to a woman, my daughter as it happens, who trains people in communicating the best of themselves for high-level interviews. And this is exactly what she says to me all the time about women. And the Minister hit on it there when he talked about people needing to come forward. And we talk a lot about confidence, which I'll come back to later. But my goodness, it's so important that you just take the bull by the horns. We've all been at this a long time now, and women do get bogged down on whether they feel comfortable about something and ruminating about that rather than looking up and outwards at the goal and how to get there. But I want to say, to begin with really, I'm delighted to be back in Longford, mostly to celebrate all the brave souls thinking of raising their heads above the parapet and looking for a seat at that table. Some of you are here, I know, some of you are watching. But I, like the Minister, really applaud everyone who does this. I don't care what their politics are. I think you're all extremely brave. As the guidebook puts it, a basic principle of democratic representation is that it produces a political body that looks like the population it represents. And we're a long way from that. But this is what this day is all about. Another reason I'm glad to be here is that my father was from North Longford, and it's a place close to the family's heart, which brings me to Longford's Women's Link, of which See Her Elected is a part, and the fact that this fantastic organisation is celebrating 30 years of life-changing work for the women of Longford, a centre point within the town for services fundamental to women's welfare, and issues fundamental to women, as we know, are fundamental to our children. It's an old cliche, but nonetheless true. If you educate a woman, you educate a nation. Founding a women's centre even now is still a wonderful thing, but 3 remarkable women founded this link at a time 30 years ago when, as founder Tess Murphy put it, women had so few rights you couldn't even sign on for a job without your husband's permission. And I think younger generations are in danger of forgetting that. I do worry about amnesia setting in, backlash is happening, and people just sort of sleepwalking into the past, if you like. The organisation has enough heft to be funded, as the Minister said, by his department, and it's only fair to acknowledge that, and you've given credit where it's due, because I think, again, politicians probably don't get enough credit for what they do. That's an odd thing to say after my go this week, but anyway. The other reason I'm here is my father was a politician, which, if I sound affectionate towards politicians, is because he was a politician. It's a long time ago, but the child of a politician never forgets. Joe Sheridan was a farmer and cattle dealer who tried several times to win a Fine Gael nomination to run for the Dáil. Now, he was a man, I know, and a strong man with a big mouth on him, but he still had to push through to get there, which he didn't in the end. There were murmurs even then, long before Donald Trump, that the votes were rigged, and he finally gave up on Fine Gael, and with fiercely faithful local supporters in Longford and Westmeath decided to run as an independent. And that was a mighty leap, as we all know, because as the guidebook points out, the downside of being an independent is that you've neither the funding, nor the marketing support, nor the big ready-made canvassing teams big parties can wheel out for a candidate. So instead, the entire Sheridan brood, there were 9 of us, was drafted in as helpers not just for elections, but all the flipping time. We took dictation, we wrote letters to ministers, we went canvassing, we attended fundraising dances where you couldn't refuse a dance because you could lose 13 votes in one family. But above all, what I remember about those years is that our home was always full of people. I know it's rather different now. You become better at separating your personal and your professional life. But there were people at the door, people crowding the hall, people in the living room, waiting to talk to their TD. And our job as small children was to welcome them and make 7 million cups of tea. And what do they want from their TD? And this is relevant to what you're all about now. It could be called brazen clientelism then. Now, and in many ways it was. You fixed things for them, things that maybe they were entitled to anyway. And they rewarded you by voting for you. And for a long time, that would have been my rather superior attitude to my father's work. It was only years later as an adult that I got a view of the people he had helped. The story was that people got into their battered old cars or got a lift from a neighbour and drove to our very out-of-the-way Westmeath home to bring their most intimate, private problems to my father. He was their confidant, advisor, a trusted mediator to represent their face to the faceless bureaucracy up there above in Dublin, or that imposing building in the town. And it's important to note here that a few of them couldn't read, many of them in fact, couldn't neither read nor write. So he wasn't just a fixer. He represented accessibility, as you all still do in many ways, because he was a local lad, one of their own, and they trusted and believed that he wanted to help them. There were people whose houses were barely habitable who were looking to have their windows fixed, or for a house in a new public housing scheme. Some things never change. People with several chronically ill children imploring the health board for a medical card, women with alcoholic husbands whose children were going hungry, men almost crazy for the lack of work, looking for a coveted job with the council, fathers trying to intercede for a wayward son who was due to appear in court. There was a category I remember in particular, even as a small child. They were called deserted wives officially, women whose husbands had abandoned families of 10 or 11 children. I remember, I can still think of the faces of some of those women. And the husband had run off to England, and I recalled car journeys with my father to leave bags of food outside their door. So Joe wasn't just a politician taking cases to the big minister above in Dublin. He also built allies in the county council with the county engineer, the health board, the Gardaí, the prison service. He was a networker back then, almost without knowing it, and that was very important when it came to making a case for his voters. And that too is emphasised in the guidebook. Finding allies, building alliances, being brave, getting out there, approaching people, saying, can we discuss what we have in common? Which the Lord knows is at the basis of every decent movement in the world right now. And it's different now, or people might think that. People can read and write and they have computers to check out their rights and entitlements, which is true progress. But any of you who have worked within communities, and I suspect it's nearly all of you, know that it's not as simple as that. Politicians at every level will tell you that their clinics are kept humming because human beings will always need a listening ear and a trusted person who can help to direct them at their most vulnerable. The guide quotes county councillors who said they perceived themselves as advocates, problem solvers, fixers, information conduits and civic leaders and much else. I know of a case where people turned up to a politician's house, I know the politician, for Christmas dinner because their electricity had gone. And what could you do but let them in? They were there for Christmas dinner. I remember when a whole family hid out in our house for a week because the father had gone bankrupt and there were angry unpaid suppliers looking for him. He did put up his hands in the end, but nonetheless, we had the pleasure of their company and the large family for a week. I remember another time when a driver left the scene of an accident in the middle of the night and arrived at my father's door asking him to support him at the local Garda station. I don't know if that still happens, Minister. I'm pleased to hear that. But people back then, they really felt, I suppose there is more confidence now. People know that they probably will get a listening ear. There are agencies, not to speak of your own, where they can go for support and that somebody will listen. But it was only as I got older that I fully appreciated my father's often very discreet actions. He was 20 years retired when he died, and thousands of people attended his funeral in Mullingar. And that was kind of pivotal for me. The handshaking in the church went on for hours because so many people with tears in their eyes wanted to tell us what he had meant to them in a time of crisis. And I think this is a deeply underappreciated part of political life. Many of us have grown cynical about politics and the people who practice it. But we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You'll hear people claim that a politician can't be authentic simply because they're politicians. So they'll vote instead for the big businessman. Remember, that's how they landed Donald Trump in the White House. Being a politician should be a badge of honour, so the ones who let us down make it all the worse. It really is a breach of faith when a politician lets the people down. And when I see a new name on the national scene, such as that long list of aspirants for the presidential nomination, I immediately look into their background, not to see if they're rich or poor or what university they went to, but was there any evidence of being active in their community? Had they a record of founding or contributing to energetic community campaigns? Had they been looking out for their area in some way, or advocating for neglected groups, or working in a job that gave them face-to-face contact daily with what was really going on in people's lives? Of course we can and should be cynical about how some politicians operate. One of my father's first tasks of the day was to consult the death notices in the papers. And he'd be first in line to shake hands with the chief mourners and out again quite quickly. And I don't think much has changed from that point of view, except maybe politicians are less ostentatious about it. But what that also means, however, is that they're doing the job. They are genuinely on the ground. They're at the funerals, at their constituency clinics, at the sports clubs, leading local projects, attending meetings at ungodly hours, like yourself, at evenings and weekends. So they know what's stirring in the communities and the parish and the constituency. And that's where you need to be as a politician. And I suppose that's the hard part when you want to sit in with a takeaway on Netflix. You have to get up off your butt and get out there. And your weekends are gone. Your time isn't your own. Voters want to see their candidates. They want to feel they know them. And that's something that hasn't changed at all. Technology and social media will help to spread your message and will also maybe send you into a tank of despair. And that's all the more reason why it will never be a substitute for face-to-face encounters. What the guidebook refers to as soft canvassing is a big part of this. It advises that even years out from the election, there's nothing to lose and much to gain by knocking in a few doors every week to say, you're thinking of running in the next council elections, or you did run, or you will run, or whatever. Tell people you want to know what's important to them. That's how you find out. This approach is so important that the best politicians continue to do it all your lives. I'm sure you do, Minister. Richard Bruton, who was a Fine Gael TD for 40 years, never missed his Saturday morning rounds of his North Dublin constituency. Even as a cabinet minister, he was still getting out there on a Saturday and going around the houses, sometimes on his own. And I was with him a few times. I shadowed a lot of politicians in my time. And sometimes the reception was brutal. I mean, I got it in the neck as well for being with him. And it was, you'd wonder how politicians go on doing it. Bertie Ahern was famous for doing that, even as Taoiseach. I think politicians generate some kind of, by just doing the work, by getting out there, they develop a kind of rhythm where they generate their own energy, their enthusiasm and adrenaline, because they have a goal, whether it's policy goals or ambition goals, and there's nothing wrong with that, we need more of it. They somehow seem to be self-generating, and it's always fascinated me, because I sit and look at them lazily and think, dear Lord, 7-day weeks, they're never left alone, they have the likes of me tormenting them all the time. How can they want to do it? As children of such a politician, I think it's important to say that not one of my siblings was prepared to run for any election. And that was before the advent of social media. Even now, much as I love the atmosphere of any kind of election, the posters, the canvassing, the dirty tricks and the intrigue and the fizzing optimism, I still ask myself how they do it, especially women. No member of a politician's family is untouched by that job, and that's worth bearing in mind, and you hit upon it again very wisely in the guidebook. I was very struck by some highly pertinent advice in the guidebook, obviously taken from some seasoned lads and lassies, about things that many women are not very good at, like take credit for what you've done, speak out, And this is a classic. I remember one of the things, and I'm sure it still happens, where a person gets a house and they get 6 letters from 6 different politicians saying, glad to see you got the house, and I'm very glad I was able to play a role in that, and they might never have played anything to do with it, but nonetheless, it's a feature of politics. And I don't blame people. It's how you get your name out there. It's a little bit of trickery involved, but what the hell? We all need a bit of trickery. So if you find somebody, a brazen local councillor who tries to claim the glory for, say, the speed ramps you campaigned for, well, you get out there and you say, do you remember when I did this? And you've got friendly with your local journalists, as the guidebook points out. You've done the interviews. Everybody knows this is what you've been banging on about it for a year and a half or 2 years. So you claim the credit. The other thing I think is very good is, which again, I don't think men would do in a million years, because maybe they don't need to, or maybe they just don't work like this. But you build your memory bank for when things are looking dismal, as they will. So to do that, you gather a few friends and family to give you 3 reasons why they think you're amazing. Have you ever done that, Minister? No, you haven't. I think it's very funny. I think it's one of the things that divides the two. Women need to hear this. They need reassurance. They need reaffirming. And it's one of our flaws that if we're not getting that positive feedback, we tend to go into a tank. So seek out publicity, because it won't come to you, I think the Minister pointed, and don't wait for the party to notice you and come to you. Do not wait. For a beginner, some of these points can't be emphasised enough. Decades ago, when a candidate went out to canvass, they had the unwritten mentorship of all the men, because they were almost all men, with accumulated decades of political cunning and know-how, and they knew the lie of the land. I remember being in North Longford and standing with a local man who would have been a fixer, I suppose, and he could look out over the whole townland and say, now, that's the Fianna Fáil house, and that's the Fine Gael house, and that used to be Labour. I'm not sure where they went after that. You couldn't do that now. There's no way of doing that now. But nonetheless, to have somebody local who's watching how the grass is growing is invaluable. And this guidebook is a huge help towards that. It's the genius of it, in fact. All that precious information that was in people's heads is now available in full colour and really entertainingly readable, actually. Backed up with the free workshops that are repeated at various times and days of the week to fit in with women's lives. And here in Longford Women's Link, by the assumption that women will need childcare and to be collected off the bus or the train. And that brings me to 2 words, I'm nearly finished, that brings me to 2 words that no doubt have been repeated constantly throughout your workshops and training sessions. One is confidence and one is authenticity. The second one drives me mad, to be honest with you, and I'll get to that in a minute. We all have a fair idea what these words mean. Basically, they mean making your message interesting and accessible and sounding like the person your own family would recognise as you. You're not just reading off a ChatGPT spiel, which is happening more and more, I'm sorry to say. The guide is very clear on how you develop your communication skills, a couple of rules, and practice, practice, practice. As you can see, I didn't practice enough because I'm reading a lot of this. Firstly, tell a story with your words. Secondly, use everyday language instead of complicated terminology. Don't talk about accessibility, talk about paths that wheelchairs and pushchairs can use. Talk about community cafes, men's sheds and dementia-friendly places instead of social inclusion and positive integration, because they've kind of become cliches in their own right, and people kind of tune out when they hear those words. The most recent example of confidence and authenticity coming together in one person, I think, was, guess? No. Correct. Absolutely. Now our president, so it worked. Many journalists had questions to ask of her, I will say freely, that were never satisfactorily answered, but Catherine Connolly's political genius was to glide past all that while being the person she has always been. She'd been delivering these same political messages for decades without a tiny turn in the road even. She spoke softly, she remained unflappable, she made her points without sounding aggressive or overly assertive or impatient, no matter what kind of provocation she was up against. And that is some trick to learn. And I think it's worth noting, because we have to, because the minister is sitting there in his lovely suit, which I'm sure is your daily uniform. And it's so easy for men. They've made it easy for themselves because they always look well in a suit. And even if you weren't wearing a tie, that's fine now too. But women, they feel they have to maybe wear a lovely bright jacket or wear something that other women in particular won't pick apart. Women can be very cruel to other women. And I think that's worth acknowledging too. But also men, as we know from social media, who, and indeed Donald Trump, who calls women piggy. Yes. It's worth noting that the last couple of weeks of the campaign, Catherine Connolly began to spruce up her appearance with a roster of bright, business-like jackets. And it's too bad that we have to talk about that, how women present themselves. But we know from childhood that it's harder for women. No matter what you wear, people will take you apart. And that's where they'll start, is how you look. So trying to be authentic by going around looking a bit streely and with your hair not done and all the rest is actually not a good idea, because that's what people think you're like inside. A bit streely and a bit vague and all that sort of thing. So I'm with Catherine Connolly and her jacket choices. But I don't necessarily agree that a politician who's been driving the same message for decades is always the most authentic. Some of the bravest politicians I've seen are those who have changed their minds publicly and awkwardly about important social issues. If you have earned the voters' trust, they will recognise that your U-turn is an act of courage rather than opportunism. My daughter in her work tells a story about the US president who said in an interview that he'd been to 57 states. Yeah, we all know there's only 50 states. I bet you're all thinking that was... Of course, but it wasn't. It was Barack Obama. And the point is, it didn't cause one batted eyelid, because Barack Obama had already established himself as a credible, trustworthy politician. And people believed him when he said, look, it was in the middle of an exhausting campaign. How easy is it to flub a number? It's very easy when you're exhausted. And poor Simon Harris found that to his cost last summer when he was, most unlike himself, became very flinty with a woman in a supermarket, and it became the story for several days. And these are times when I think we really are very unforgiving towards politicians, and we ought to sort of think a little bit. But also politicians could help themselves. He could have said, I really, really should have taken a rest a week ago. I should have taken a break. It all got to me. I've taken 2 days off now and I'm grand again. And I already apologised to the women, which he did several times as far as I know. I think a lot of women second-guess themselves and ramble on a bit about overthinking things or not being comfortable with things, as if it's unique to them or to all women. Most people get nervous coming up to a big interview or speech. If you're not, you should be. But I think women have to get over that. I do now. I think for a long time that was very much a consideration at meetings between women. A huge amount of time was given to, are you nervous? No, I'm really nervous. God, no, I always get really nervous at times like this. But women really have to move on from that. It's too time consuming. I don't think anyone is born with the confidence to get up and give a lucid, interesting, original speech. I've met men who are senior ministers freely perspiring before a big interview. You have to decide that it doesn't matter whether you're comfortable or not, but that you have to come across as a persuasive, strong communicator whose message is clear and whose judgment is sound. And you'll make mistakes, but you'll own up. And the only way to do that is to work at it. Catherine Connolly made it look easy. But when you think about it, no one could have been more prepared. She's being praised now for the fact that, as far as I know, she didn't have a media trainer. And I think the reason she managed to get away with it is she'd had decades of practice, not only in politics, but as a practicing barrister. And she never changed her demeanour. Because the more times you do something, the more you're building a muscle memory for it. And that also is emphasised in the guide. The guide is a word for you about how to tackle a speech. Practice, 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 till you can deliver it without reading it. And at a push, they allow one card with key words. Sorry, I didn't get to practice. I winced when I read about the card with 3 words, because I can just tell you a brief story that years ago, when Questions and Answers was still a very popular current affairs programme hosted by John Bowman. Live current affairs show, live audience. And the invited panel, journalists, politicians, commentators, had to answer questions posed by the audience. Now, they would have a fair idea of the questions, what the subjects were going to be, but not what the question was going to be. So, come the night, I'm invited to go on, and I perspire for 2 days. I read bits of books, I read reports, I delved into newspaper analysis, and hardly slept for 2 nights, preparing for every possible curveball. And because I have a really terrible memory, I laboriously wrote out notes and statistics and reminders under various headings and ended up with a huge sheaf of papers, which of course I brought into the studio with me. We sat down in the studio under the blinding lights, which you'll be familiar with, makeup artist powdering my nose, and I'm nervously clutching my pages, and John Bowman comes over and bends down and removes all the pages from my hands. And he said, "You'll be fine," in a whisper. He was very diplomatic about it. I can't tell you the panic I felt at that moment. I just thought, I am lost. I will not remember a thing. But it's amazing what happens when you've done your homework, because something is in there. And if you've said a lot of it out loud, again, as the guidebook suggests, so that it sounds like you as opposed to ChatGPT, you can probably trust yourself to get the words out when the moment comes and the question is asked, because it's in there. You have to trust that it comes out. We are told that if you believe in yourself, that's a huge part of the battle, but in my case, that wasn't enough. The one thing I did know was my audience, a well-informed crowd of people who wouldn't tolerate fluff or fake humility or it's only little me, and, you know, this is just my opinion, like, you have to get over that. Women have to get over that. Men are much better at that. I suspect that Heather Humphreys, a very warm, sensible, intelligent, very experienced politician, never quite got that point in her presidential campaign. She never looked like a woman who knew her audience or knew what she wanted to say about her goals. In fact, she seemed to shrink as the campaign progressed. Sorry, Minister. Maybe the sectarian abuse got to her. I suspect it might have, because it was deep and bitter, and a lot of people preferred to ignore it. But the contrast between those two experienced operators was very interesting to watch and to see how they developed as time went on. And there are many lessons in there for everyone. Anyway, I still knew notes, as you can see. And when something fairly stressful is required, I still go back to my happy memory bank of that current affairs programme, when everything went as I hoped it would, and what it took to make that work. And what's it all for? Why is it so important for women to take this mighty leap? I'll finish by talking about an Irish Times Women's podcast I did last week with Catherine Zappone, an activist who elected an independent TD in 2016 by 152 votes of a majority. So if anybody tells you their vote doesn't count, by gum it does. She became the first independent woman to be a cabinet minister, because that's the way the numbers fell in 2016. And for those of you already dealing with disgusting abuse in social media or in real life, you won't be surprised to hear that while a minister, she was confronted by all that, including a full website accusing her of witch-like activities by a certain well-known young Conservative belonging to a certain well-known family, who I will not oblige by using his name. To protect herself, she simply stopped looking at social media. And I don't know if anybody feels they have that luxury these days. But I remember Heather Humphrey saying the same thing when she was retiring from the Dáil, that she just simply stopped looking at the comments. But then people protested outside her home, her isolated home, and she was assigned a Garda from Garda station as security, which, as you pointed out, Minister, is a fairly regular event now, and it's an appalling turn of affairs. I told her I was coming to talk to all of you this week, and She Who Elects, and what would she say to a wuss like me, whose first instinct is to look at the abuse and the time taken, and my first instinct is to say, don't do it. Don't do it, right? And without hesitation, she said, do it. Even though she lost her seat and has been through murder since then, because she made a few misjudgments. But she said, do it. Seek your potential. We need your voices in the council chambers, in the Seanad, in the Dáil. because sitting at the table as a woman really makes a difference. When we see the number of elected women go backwards, it can be extremely dispiriting. But one thing we have to remember, being a woman at the table really makes a difference. And in her memoir, she gives many examples in her own career where being a woman in politics was pivotal. And I'd forgotten about all this until I read her memoir, actually. Her successful battles for increased budgets in childcare while in cabinet, for example, her long-term activism for reproductive rights and same-sex marriage, found a truly new influence and power as a cabinet minister. So I heard lots of people saying, oh, none of those social programs would have happened if activists hadn't got it all going. That is true to a point, but you do need politicians to nail it down. It will not happen without politicians. It's about establishing your priorities, she said, how you go about trying to achieve them, and maintaining your integrity in doing that. And that's a neat trick as well. She lost her seat and landed in a heap of trouble, but she also succeeded beyond her wildest dreams. That's the deal. As the minister said, it's a tough one, but it's worth it. And can I just say, good luck to every one of you.
Thanks very much, Kathy. Everyone in this room knows that you can't win every single election, so I'm delighted to introduce the former Senator, Kathleen O'Meara, to read her poem, How to Lose an Election.
Yes, this is a lesson in authenticity. Lovely to see you all, by the way, and particularly lovely to see people who I've only met online and are here today in person. It's just gorgeous. I'm really looking forward to getting back to our workshops in January. Hi, Esther. And getting back into just the whole, and the campaign, you know, it's 4 years out, but, you know, let's get going. So as Megan said, you know, we don't all win elections. I lost a fair few myself. So I've taken up, would you believe, at a late stage, creative writing. And I was at a poetry workshop, and the guy who was leading the poetry workshop said, you know, there are several kind of forms you can do, blah, blah, blah. And there's one called, you know, a how-to form, a how-to anything. And I thought, there's one thing I really know how to do, is how to lose an election. So I couldn't resist. I wrote this poem, How to Lose an Election. The boxes will open at 9 to sort the votes in a sports hall big enough to count a county. Tally teams will gather early, clipboards at the ready, leaning over railings, necks craning, scanning papers. A serious, concentrated quiet will descend. Your life is being decided. Plan the day. Don't leave a minute unscheduled. Your brain is buzzed after weeks of battle. The high-octane game has left you exhausted and wide awake. Stop pacing the kitchen. Get on the boots and head for the hills. Tell yourself not to start smoking again. Leave the phone in the drawer until at least 12 noon, the appointed time for a call from the campaign manager. Get your hair well styled and sprayed. Spend time on the makeup. Put on your best coat. Above all, look good. Check the handbag for rescue remedy. Bring a sister, 2 if possible. This is the day you emerge from the tunnel that had only you in it. Like an astronaut re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. Brace yourself. The first wave of emotion will hit you when you meet your team and read the disappointment in their eyes, their hope shattered, the dream ended, knowing that next week or next month at Mass or on the street or at work, they will hear whispers as they pass. Sure, that one never had a hope. She's only a blow-in, too big for her boots. Put your arms around them and hold them and give each other ballast. It will be hours before this ends. Later, tongues loosened by trips to the pub, someone from the other team will come to talk to you. If you'd been with us, we'd have moved in around you and you'd be in the cabinet by now. He meant it as a compliment. But have I not sold enough of my soul already? Go home now. Go to the place where you are loved and cherished. Take the time to restore yourself. fill yourself back up with courage and determination for the next battle. And don't forget, in those moments of healing, to take back all those bits of your soul that you have inadvertently and with all the right intentions given away. And join the workshops.
Thanks very much, Kathleen. I'm glad you got that plug in there. That brings our launch to a close. We're delighted to have you all here today. If you need more information, check out our website, seeherelected.au. Thank you very much.